morning, Dog Crew 2 and Cujo. Madeline says good morning.
Sounds like she's got a future in show business.
In this live television picture, you can see the lid closing to the Solar Extreme Hitchhiker experiment. That will keep that particular telescope free of any jet thruster contamination during the course of the rendezvous maneuvers, which will be ongoing over the next several hours.
Endeavour Houston, we see a good burn.
Roger.
Flight Dynamics Officer reports that the rendezvous burn was right on the money, placing Endeavour on a increased trajectory and the proper course to intercept the Spartan science satellite. Countdown clock's now ticking backward toward the next burn, which will occur a little over 2 hours from now. That will be a NCC burn, a corrective combination burn that will improve the orbiter's trajectory heading toward the Spartan satellite using a state vector updated by star tracker passes and onboard navigational updates that the crew will be receiving over the next couple of hours.
Endeavour. Houston, for Cujo, we copied your last about the low rate on Spartan when you came in during the fly around, and that from our initial assessment is consistent. That and the incorrect attitude of Spartan is consistent with the Spartan vehicle going into a minimum reserve power mode, sort of a shutdown, and after we've berthed Spartan, we're going to get you during the post-recovery config to give us statuses and possibly assess what might have happened.
Hey, thanks, Nanook. We're in the middle of berthing right this very instant, and we'll talk to you about that in just a few minutes.
Okay.
So it took a little longer than had been expected, but the Spartan science satellite was successfully retrieved by Endeavour's astronauts, and now has been placed in its berthing platform in the cargo bay for the trip back home. The timeline for the rest of the day's activities for the astronauts will have some minor revisions to it. The major activity for the rest of the day will be pre-deployment checkouts and health checks of the Wake Shield facility, which is scheduled to be deployed around 4:45 a.m. Central Time tomorrow morning.
This is Mission Control, Houston. as Endeavour has just passed over the easternmost edge of the South American continent, now out flying over the Atlantic Ocean at an altitude of about 202 nautical miles. After the second burn, the OMS 4 burn that's being conducted later today to circularize Endeavour's orbit, Mike Gernhardt will reach out with the shuttle's robot arm, and he will use that to grapple the wake shield facility. It will remain in that configuration overnight in the payload bay with the arm attached to it in anticipation of that deployment tomorrow. Wake shield will then spend about 48 hours trailing the orbiter at a distance of 30 to 40 miles. During that time, it will attempt to use a process called molecular beam epitaxy to grow very thin films for use in the semiconductor industry. Retrieval of the wake shield facility is set for Wednesday at 10:16 a.m. However, about the last 5 hours of its flight will be devoted to its use basically as a target, as Ken Cockrell and Dave Walker on the flight deck will conduct a series of complex maneuvers, allowing Endeavour to fire its engines toward the wake shield facility in an attempt to increase our knowledge base about the effects of thruster jet firings on objects in space, this as we enter the era of the space station. All systems on board are continuing to perform very well. The crew members are in the waning hours of their day. In just over an hour, Mission Specialist Mike Gernhardt is supposed to begin an 8-hour sleep period. He'll be joined about an hour later by his crewmates, who will have an abbreviated 7-hour sleep shift before they begin wake shield deploy activities Monday. The crew's wake-up call will come tonight at 11:09 p.m. Central Time, and that's when they'll wake up to begin Flight Day 5 on orbit. For the next several days, Mission Specialists Mike Gernhardt and Jim Newman will slightly alter their sleep patterns so that one or both of them is awake at all times for critical commands for the wake shield facility. They will not be providing 24-hour support, however, they will be awake during all critical commanding periods for that facility. Once again, we are receiving live television from the payload bay cameras on board Endeavour, as Endeavour is sailing some 203 nautical miles over the surface of the Atlantic Ocean, just about to cross over the southernmost tip of the African continent. Newman will be maneuvering the shuttle's robot arm to grapple the wake shield facility, which is mounted on its cross bay carrier in Endeavour's payload bay. The spacecraft and the arm will remain in that configuration overnight, with the shuttle's robot arm securely grappled to the spacecraft in anticipation of its deployment at 4:42 a.m. Central Time Monday. The message that was just sent up to the crew members on board. Just a reminder to Jim Newman as he maneuvers that arm that the Solar Extreme Ultraviolet Hitchhiker canister, which is mounted directly behind the wake shield facility as part of the International Extreme Ultraviolet Hitchhiker payload, will be doing some observing during the time that the arm is in motion, and just a reminder to him that if he can keep from crossing the path of that observation, that will help that experiment continue its activities. Here in the flight control room, the officer
We're back with you. Teeters east, and we see a good grapple.
Yeah, Story, that's what we got.
The officer in charge of the shuttle's robot arm here in the flight control room reporting a good grapple, that confirmed by the crew members on board Endeavour as well.